Can we get started? It's straight up 6, a minute or two after. Oh, there we are. Good evening, sir. He's got his new membership application.
Yay.
You were here last time or time before? I forgot. Last time.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
There we go.
What's his name?
I forgot.
Norm, do you know the last name, Norm?
At least I'm honest about it, guys. Does everybody have their name tag on? We need to get your name tag. Okay, and see Steve Verhulst at the back, and he'll take your application, and we'll get you on the mailing list, et cetera, et cetera.
He's moving.
Oh, he is? Well, that's all right. We'll put a wrong address in the database, and then we'll just update it. All right. Hi, everybody. Happy Easter, a day late.
Happy Easter, Mr.
And-
Curtis.
Yeah, and I hope the Easter Bunny found all you guys.
I wondered what tape it was.
Yeah, the tape, yeah, see, that's for the camera. Okay, so it's Monday, April 5th, and we've got another meeting going, and let's see, visitors and guests. Should we consider the gentleman a visitor or guest, or is he a new member? He's a new member.
It's whatever he wishes to be.
Okay. All right. No visitors or guests, right? Okay. How about online people? We have, let's see, 13?
14.
We have 14 people in attendance
That's Monday.
at the meeting. Okay, how many, Dustin, do we have a count on how many, 2 online? All right. Is one Ralph Winch?
I couldn't tell you.
Ralph, are you listening?
He'd have to type into the chat and tell us.
Ralph, type into chat.
Yeah.
Just waiting for it.
I talked to Ralph earlier today, and for those of you who don't know, he had neck surgery a couple of weeks ago now, and he's getting better. And I've called him, I think, 3 or 4 times now since he got home from the hospital. And he's getting better. He's not up and running yet. He's real anxious about having everybody out to the sawmill in August. Okay, so anyway, I conned him into logging in online and watching us. So everybody say hi, Ralph.
Hi, Ralph.
Hi, Ralph.
Get well quick.
Terry Tuttle says hi.
Okay, Terry Tuttle is high. Okay, so Terry Tuttle, 1.
Say, look at me.
All right. All right, I got, I'll take that. Okay, all right. Okay, so hellos and formalities are done. Okay, treasurer's report. What do we got, what you got for us, Steve?
Well, we're virtually the same, we're right around same as last month. We
Not much
spent-
activity, guys,
we spent a
okay?
couple hundred bucks.
We do have an additional new member form, Jim Newbanks, was it Jim Newbanks? Yes, okay. He called me and said, I got a buddy that I wanna pay for his dues, and we haven't seen him yet, but we got a check for his dues, and I was hoping they were gonna be here tonight, but we'll get going on that next month, okay? So we got 2 new members. And, well, let's see, you paid a few bills from the open shop, okay? All right, yes.
You said Jim Newbanks is a new member?
No, he's an existing member. He's bringing in a friend of his as a new member.
Okay.
And that new member's name is Todd Robinson.
Todd Robinson?
Yeah,
And then him as
yeah.
Thank you.
And Norma's got a new member here that was here last year. Welcome back, thank you for coming.
And
Yes.
What's his name?
I don't know, I forgot. I'm 70 years old, cut me some slack, will ya? Okay.
He's old.
Yeah, I'm not big.
Put your name in there.
for newsletter's sake,
Steve Gage.
the name of.
Augie.
Nice to have you here.
Huh?
Augie.
Augie,
A-U-G?
okay.
A-U-G-I-E.
A-U-G-I-E.
And his last name?
Don't ask his last name.
Aram, A-R-U-M.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
We all get a little harder here.
Thank you. And welcome, thank you and welcome.
They spell things funny in Nigeria.
Well, try to spell class.
All right, treasurer's report. Old business, we had an open shop a couple Saturdays ago. There were 13 gentlemen there. And we got a really, really cool education on what Jerry Marsick does. And we've got, there were photographs that were published in the last newsletter, so, along with the write-up from Dave. So, I thought it was really successful. We had hot dogs for lunch and snacks and what have you, and I think everybody had a good time, you know. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There were 7. 7 of us here were there, so that's pretty cool. And I appreciate everybody having a chance to show up. We'll see if we get another open shop lined up for maybe May or June. We'll see how it works out. Okay. Other old business. Ralph Winch, he's recovering from vertebrae surgery, and I probably should get him a card in the mail, and I haven't done that yet. So we already talked about Ralph. Okay. Other old business. Anybody else got anything to talk about under old business? Nobody? Okay. New business. The picnic. I talked to can't figure his name either. Yes, thank you. Yes, Cortelliu. And he is making a contact with Chatham Park District. We're gonna have the annual spouses and family picnic is tentatively scheduled for the second Sunday in July, the 11th, one week after the July 4th weekend.
Rochester Park District or Chatham?
Rochester, yeah, Rochester Park. And he's going to make the reservation because he lives there, and it's only $50 if he makes the reservation. So we will we'll have more on that in May and June. Okay. Let's see, Norm, you said something, you had some new business. Here, you have to step up here and stand in the, there you go.
Several years ago, we had 2 guys come in and talk about their new business. They started out as basically laborers that went around and tore down old barns. Mostly they saved the weathered siding and the beams for future projects. Then a couple years later, they rented a big building. They started making salvage projects, and some companies and corporations got hooked on their product, and it allegedly was blooming at that time. They did invite us to visit their facility to see their machinery and projects in progress, as well as the decoration in their own offices and shop. I think now that the COVID is stabilizing, that we ought to consider doing that again. I meant to bring it up at the recent board meeting, but I wasn't able to make it, so maybe we can think about that later.
Okay. How about a contact name and phone number?
I can't remember their name. Does anybody here remember?
Yes, I do. There were a couple of fire department guys, right?
Was it Sangamon Reclaimed or?
Yeah, that's what it is, reclaim, yeah.
Yeah.
Because he came last spring, wasn't it? Gave a presentation.
It's been within the last year or so. I was really impressed with it. What a business. What I thought was really so cool about it was that some of this wood that he was salvaging out of barns, he cut it up and straightened it up and did this and that, and it was suitable for sale. And he had it on his shelf in his business, and he was open Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, if I remember correctly. And you could come down and looking for a huge piece of oak for a project, just sitting there for you, ready to go. So, yeah, that's not a bad idea. Let's see if we can get in contact with them and see if they wanna come back out again. Or,
Would it be best during the week, or are there too many of us that are working during the week? Should it be a Saturday workshop?
personally, I'd suggest a Saturday workshop myself.
You know, are they open then? You know, we need to find that out, but, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah, that sounds probably Saturday.
okay, all right. Let's see if we can figure out, how to get in touch with them and see if they're amenable, and we'll all go down and, take a look at what they do. I'd appreciate it, I'd enjoy that, for sure. Of course, there isn't much about woodworking I don't enjoy, so. Okay, let's see, I think there's one other piece of new business. She has an announcement. Tamara, come on up and.
Sure. So I'm officially going to Brigham Young University in Idaho, and my first day of classes is July 26th. So
Wow.
Congratulations.
Brigham Young in Idaho?
in Idaho, yeah.
Oh, okay, I didn't know they had another one.
Yeah, they have one in Idaho and they have one in Hawaii as well.
Oh, okay.
So,
How come you didn't go to Hawaii?
well, they rarely accept, Caucasians. So.
Okay.
Where are you gonna study?
I'm going to major in biochemistry,
Yeah?
and I'm planning to eventually end up minoring in theater arts. So, but I need to talk to the
Okay.
counselor before I can officially do that. So,
Ain't your way to success.
yep.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful.
Yep.
Well, best of luck to you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, very
Still
good.
gonna pay your dues?
All right.
Yeah, before you go.
Okay. Anybody have anything else for new business? Any other ideas? Things you wanna talk about? Okay, all right, seeing none, let's move on to the, program for this evening. We have two people registered for that, Mike Redemeyer and Curtis Meinhardt. Mike, would you like to go first? You want me to?
Sure, sure.
Okay, all right.
You want that?
Yeah, I think that might be helpful.
Give me a quick second.
Well, I think this was supposed to be groups of 5 guys that got together and did a project, but I don't know who they were. This is a table that I built 5 years ago, and it's called Hancock Candle Table. Hancock Shaker Village is, I don't know, New York, I kind of forget where, maybe Pennsylvania. At any rate, I first saw it in this magazine here, and I thought, well, I've seen a lot of these shaker 3-legged tables, but I really like the lines of this one. And this is an exact copy of, or supposed to be an exact copy of one at the village. So, it turned out nice. We've been using it ever since. But we found a need for another one, so I got another one in progress here. And I thought I'd go over.
Leave that one on, please. You can leave the back ones on, that way we can see him.
Okay.
Go over the details of construction. They had me make a couple of jigs, which is pretty helpful. Well, actually, just one in particular. The way this is made, it's with sliding dovetails. It's right here. And these all have to be hand cut. There's probably a way to do it with a router, but by the time you figured that out, you probably do this. And I'm a fan of building skills and not just learn how to use machines, although there's nothing wrong with that too, and I got plenty of machines. But this one was done just by hand. So they have you make a jig that will allow you to lay out the dovetails, and you can see them right there. It's I got, maybe I'll go through, you can see that, I use this gauge here.
There you go.
To put up there and mark that dovetail out, and it also gives me the radius of the pedestal itself. Okay, just advance it as
Oh,
well.
no, I gotta do that.
So, can you guys see that? It looks fuzzy to me.
Yeah.
Yeah? So anyway, you transfer those lines down from, that I drew on the top, maybe on the bottom, can't remember, anyway, you bring the lines down, and you score it with a knife, and then you score a line. It's not at all clear, but there's two lines there. Can you adjust that at all?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
better.
right there.
Okay.
That's right. So there's two cut lines there, and then on the next frame, you can see the piece that came out of those cut lines, and that gives a nice curve for a handsaw, which would be the next one. And there's the saw in the kerf after I cut it, legs held down on the bench with, I think I used that to hold fast there. And, you know, at first it seems like, well, this is gonna be hard, it's by hand, it's gonna be straight. But the thing is, the saw blade's straight, and you can cut a pretty straight line with it, you know? And once you see that happen, you have more confidence, and it's like, well, okay. So after you cut the line, in the next frame, shows the chisel taken out to form the dovetail itself. And then after that, the next frame shows the finished dovetail. Not too bad. It actually looks good, but the thing is making it match the other one. And when you're working by hand with something like this, sliding dovetails, even with, if you're doing it with a router on something other than an item like this, they're either too tight or too loose, seems like. It's hard to get them to where they just slip together, but it can be done. So what I've found, at least to this point in my skill level on sliding dovetails, is you gotta be just a little bit loose to get the whole thing to go together. And that is what the result was with this. I was pretty happy with them. But, you know, there's a little bit of play in them. By the time you glue them up, and then on the bottom you put what's called a spreader. I can show you that on this one here. It's a metal spider, I think they call it, yeah. Which they seem to do regularly on these tables. And I've seen three-legged tables before that were broken out, and it's always the dovetail mortise right along the bottom here. So once you keep the legs tight together, they can take a lot of abuse because the pressure on top is inward. But at the bottom, it would be outward to split them. So, after we got the dovetail cut for the leg, on the legs, the next frame shows the bottom of the main pedestal. And you use the same jig to draw out the dovetails to be cut into there. You see one of them's already cut out. Actually, they're already saw cut there, but I think I got a better picture of that happening in the next frame. Now that's afterwards. So I cut one down the side. You start at the corner and you just follow your line. It gets tight when it's down here. I tried a few different methods for opening this up. Traditionally, you just use a bit and brace or a drill bit, and you just drill a series of holes down there. But on this one, I thought I'd try something different, and I put a cut down the middle. I notched them all out at the top of the mortising chisel, and it was dull, so it was, and I didn't have a sharpener for it. So while I got it done, I wasn't happy with it. And one of them, I think I don't have a picture of it, but I actually used that mortising chisel all the way down, set to a certain depth. And that worked okay, but it still seemed a bit of a fight. Next frame. There it is, cutting. You always start at the corner, and then you work your blade down, watching where you're at. So So, and then up here, even with that, mortise cut out, it's just hard to cut into a corner like that, you know, you really can't get all the way, but, you do what you can, and I had a little, a little piece here that I would put up against there, because when you're sawing, you don't wanna tear up the wood here, and I also didn't turn the rest of this until I got these done. And just as a side note, turning this bottom part, you do that first. I'm sorry, I'm thinking of a different project. So yeah, you do, I turned that bottom part first, left the rest of it just in the full chunk, so if it did get damaged, it would be easier to clean up, and this protected that edge right there. Next frame. And there's just working the pieces out. You just, with a chisel and I used more carving mallet with some weight in it, but it's easier to handle, and you take layers out till you get to the bottom. Next frame. More of the same, moving along. Got it down to where the legs are in. Now I tried 3 different methods. One was the mortising chisel down through the trough like I had mentioned earlier, and then I tried drilling it. That worked okay. But what I found I liked the best, I had a 3/8, at least a 3/8 bit that I ground a brad point tip on. It was nice and sharp, and I drilled all the way into the end grain on the last one I did, and that worked about as well as anything, but you got to make sure you don't go up or down. And so then once you get all the legs fitting in there, you can turn the top half of it without, you know, fear of it being damaged somewhere else. What do I have for the next frame? You can see there's a little bit, I mentioned they were kind of loose, but they slide together pretty nice. In time you put that spider on the bottom and glue the legs in. This one I didn't have any trouble, although it's curious. I was looking at it, it's like, I think this one came out better than the first one. I don't know what that is, but I've seen plenty of projects where the first one come out better than the second one. But this is fun. So, next frame, please. And then you put them in, and you have this overhang here, and so you can't see it in here, I guess, but I drew a pencil line along all of them. And I marked all these legs for their appropriate socket because they won't fit as well into other ones. And then after that, the next frame shows, you can see the line that I drew in that previous frame. Then you just take a spoke shave and you chamfer that down to where it blends right in. After that, it came to, this is looking down on one of the legs, and you can see these lines here. They have you taper the bottom 4 inches to where it's just 3/8 at the bottom, and it really, you wouldn't think it'd be strong enough. And they're real tiny toes, but I mean, there's really no weakness to be noticed in those, and it gives it a much nicer appearance. Matter of fact, you can see that compared. I got one of them done here, as opposed to the ones that have not been. And while that would be acceptable if you kind of ease the edges, I think that's much more appealing look. I have to agree with the shakers on that one. Okay. So that was drawing the lines, and then the next frame shows a view from the bottom, which I just showed you with the narrow 3/8 in between, what's going to be left. You got to take off these chamfers here down the sides. The next frame is, they talked about doing the spoke shave, which worked fine, but I just used my little block plane and it worked well. Just getting it held right. So most handwork stuff, the biggest challenge you have is getting it held, and that's half the battle. If you got a good bench and a few different techniques, you can do a whole lot with handwork quite easily. Next frame. Yeah, that's just after I chamfered it down the first side. Well, that's both sides. You see the gap underneath. Chamfering the legs. Okay. There's the finished one. It might be the last frame. Okay. And then after that, Which light switch is it on? Turn on.
The right one.
Yeah.
Right here?
Yep.
I thought it might be easier to show you some of those things on the screen. So after you get it together, then it's a matter of mounting the top. And the way they show it is with a board. I chose to do another circle underneath where they just have like a 1x, and they chamfer it and make it look nice. But use the same deal where you drill a hole. Go ahead.
No,
Drill a hole and your tenon comes through. You put a couple of cuts in it, and then you glue it and shim it and wedge it together. Couple of wedges. And prior to doing that, I drilled and countersunk it. So you'll wedge it and you'll cut this off, and then the top I didn't bring. Just one more thing to carry, and got one there anyway. So put it together, and this one, as I recall, I coated it with an oil varnish, which had linseed, just polyurethane and thinner for a first coat, and then after that I just used clear polyurethane. So been real happy with it. It's a neat little project, fun little hand project. But the sliding dovetails, you know, you gotta have a little patience with them, but that's what I like to do. So what the heck. Any questions?
So, Mike, usually the reason why they do that one single piece is so that then essentially it acts like a batten, you know, for that top board, so that it doesn't bow up and down.
Mhm.
Which way do you orient since you got a disc instead? Are you gonna do cross grain orientation or?
I wasn't really planning on that because I didn't see, well, number one, you know, I had the wood cut up for a while, and this one here, it was stable.
Mhm.
And this one here, I've had it cut and finished on the bench, just on some calls for maybe a month now, because there's been plenty of other stuff going on. And it's still flat as a pancake.
Okay.
It might be a good idea to rotate that. When I was drilling these holes, I was thinking, well, how will I line it up? And I thought, well, I'll just match the other one. But that's a pretty good idea to,
If you were gluing the two together, of course, you would want them in the same orientation,
Yeah, right.
grain, so that you
Yeah.
don't have things blowing apart. Since
Mhm.
they're screwed together, you could do it either way. And
yeah, that's a good idea. And I never thought of that board in there, and they didn't, sometimes I see these articles that I wanna build, and I kinda read it and look at pictures, and the next thing you know, I'm building it. So he might have spoke about putting that cross grain in there. And I just figured it would be more stable with a wider disc than just a long, it was just a 1x4 maybe that they had under there. And, you know, it was supposed to be an exact replica, but at some point, I don't care about that. I want the look, and I wanna build it as strong as I can, or best I can, as light as I can.
You want it to be your own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was nicer, and so that's what I did. So I'll have to think about how I might just do that, because right now I've got these holes drilled in both pieces, grain orientation the same direction. But,
Okay.
yeah, so, yeah, I don't know.
I had to ask, where are these pieces going?
Well, it's in my house. This one's in the living room by mine and my wife's chairs, and this one, I built that rocker, that last one I brought in here, and that's in the living room now too, and it doesn't have anywhere to sit and drink, and so I thought, oh, between that and the couch, which is near, it'd be nice to have in there, so. Yeah, they'll both be in the same room. Mhm. Yeah. Mhm.
Are you gonna stain it the same color?
No, it's not stained.
Or-
That's just, it darkens up with the boiled linseed oil, but that's what sun does to cherry, UV rays. Yeah, so, I'm not much on stains. I'll use them on occasion, but I'm pretty big on paint, so I guess as far as chairs, but that's kind of for a different reason. But I like the natural wood colors that you get with.
So they'll be
things.
matched?
Yeah, I guess. You know, the one thing I was gonna do is, just because of all the Windsor chairs, the seats, I bring the legs through and you wedge them, and you always see that. I was gonna do that in the top of this one, but at the last minute, I decided I'd just build it the same. So, besides the chair, that's pretty much it.
Very good, thank you.
You're welcome. seen Roy Underhill a few times make this a three-legged table, but it was not the shape of one. I forget what it was called exactly. It's named after, I think, the shop that designed it or produced it. But again, three-legged, but this is a tapered sliding tenon, which was a head scratcher for me when I first saw the show, but I was so taken by it, but I always wanted to do it, and I thought I would do it with this table, incorporate this method into it. But it turns out you need bigger pieces to do a nice job, and I didn't want to make the table any bulkier, but the way this gets done is you cut those side walls just like you did on this one, but before you take out the stuff in the middle, you put it back in the lathe, and then you turn it from a cylinder to a cone. So the opening would be wider here than here. So it creates a sliding dovetail that isn't tight until it's all the way in. And I was happy enough with the success of it as far as making the joint, but not to put it in a table, not to put it in this table, like I say. You need to have a bigger mass, it seemed like to me, to make this practical than I wanted to have it now. But anyway, tapered sliding dovetail, kind of neat.
Very good.
Right,
Let's see that one.
Dustin, thanks for putting the pictures together for me, appreciate that.
I need the same thing too. I think I have 24 photos there if we got them all. For some reason, some of the photos I sent went through, and some of them did not, and I had to resend them, so. This is my workbench. I think Bob Steinel can probably tell you more about my workbench than I can, if you want to know the truth.
Well, you did a great job. It's pretty sharp and very functional.
It is. It really and truly is. We have some more, let's see, how does this thing work? Do I turn it on here?
The bottom button, laser button, yep. And I gotta switch the slides for you, because.
Oh, there you go.
Bench function
Okay.
is much more important than you need looks.
If you were here in January, I talked about assembling the everything that I did for the tabletop portion of it. Built it in 3 pieces. The tabletop was one half, the left half and the right half. And then I assembled the legs and the supports, the lateral supports. The whole thing is made out of 2x4s, glued together, the top and all the struts. And last time I talked about this, I talked about how I ran the 2x4 through the table saw and cut off that 1/4 inch of round on each of the 2 long ends and made it a square when I glued the 2 together. That's actually just simply glued together. What did I do? I lost my. Did I turn it off?
Your point high.
Oh, there it is. Okay. All right. There's just a glue line right down there between those 2, and I clamped them together, just like anything else that we put together, and I made it a 3x3, this certain length. This one here is one of the 4 legs, and my original idea was I was going to cut. This is the tenon part of it, and I was going to literally cut a mortise into each of the 4 corners of that table, the size of this tenon, by hand, and set the tabletop in there. And that was way too large of a project for me to do at my level of expertise at this point. And one of the things Bob suggested, why don't you cut the tenon off and then use pocket hole screws and screw it to the frame using an extra 2x4 in there. And that's what that is right there, is the domino cuts that we were making so that we could put the shelving into it, okay? Next slide. There's the two frame pieces. Before I put two by fours struts in. I think there's two on top and two on the bottom, each halfway through there. And that's what it looked like just as we were working on it. Okay, next slide. There's the tabletop. That's after I glued it together. Bob and I glued it together. Each one of those is, there's 12 2x4s in each half, so that's 18 inches and 18 inches, so it's 36 inches across, and it's just a couple inches short of 5 feet down. I manufactured it 5 feet down, and we had to cut up the ends and even out the ends, which I knew I was going to do. So next slide, please. There we go. We're attaching the struts together, keeping in place. There's a little piece there that lined up the Craig jig. No, what was that?
The dominoes.
The dominoes. Yeah. Okay. So we had to place it in there so that we got precision in where we were going to stick it together. Okay. Next slide. There's the inside struts. These we did with the pocket screws, and again we had to use clamps to keep everything orientated correctly and properly. So it was a really pretty cool thing, a cool way to put this together. There's the pockets. There's 2 of them on each side. There's another one, 2 of them there. You guys like my ketchup bottle? You guys believe me when I tell you I had ketchup there? That's filled with glue. Okay, good. Next slide. There we are again. Got to make sure it's perpendicular. Okay, and it was. So I was real happy with that. Okay, next one. There. Now we've got Rich Nichols borrowed clamps, keeping it together. Okay. It's actually upside down. I haven't cut off the tenons yet. Okay. All right. Next slide. And now we are evening out the edge. Okay. That was pretty cool. We got about 20 minutes left, so I'm just going to go ahead and skip through this. Next slide. And that's with the top sitting on it. And that's where I was going to cut mortises in each of the corners. And that was way over my pay grade at this point. Maybe next time. We'll see. It's 2.5 inches. It's 2 3/4 inches thick. Because that was 3.5 inches to start with. I cut 1/4 of an inch off each side. So that got it down to 3. Then I took it to the sander, and they took 1/8 of an inch off of each side, the top side and the underneath bottom side. Okay, so that's 2 3/4 inches thick, and that's not an advisable step.
You could, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
You could cut those tenons off shorter and just mortise them in an inch, inch and a half.
Yeah, that was an idea. I didn't come up with that one, but yeah, you're right. We could have.
Oh, are you past that point now?
Oh, wait, yes. Yeah, it's actually together.
Oh,
okay. Next slide. All right, so now it's ready. By this time here, I had cut the tenons off completely flush, and there's a little spacer. I'm going to put a 2x4 down each side, okay, and I put that one in there for sizing and setting it up and what have you. The tabletop is resting on some bricks that I had on the floor, and I put some cardboard down on top of the bricks so I wouldn't mar the surface. Okay, and I just have them from there to there so that I get them in place and get them steady and they won't move. And next slide. And there I'm drilling pocket holes. I went out and bought the new Craig jig. It was $40 over at Menards. Wow, it's a really good tool. I have never done a pocket hole in my life, and I think this really did work out really, really nicely. Okay, there's our, let's see, there's our marks on the underside of the table where we marked it, where we were drilling holes for the dominoes, and we got everything lined up right. Okay, next slide. It was a wintertime project, and that's my deck with about 12 inches of snow on it. And I just wanted to throw that in to let you know that I was downstairs working on woodwork when we were snowed in. Okay, all right, there we go. This is my test piece, and I brought it in with me. I'll pass it around if you want to. It's just got some holes in it here that I had to learn how to use my new tool, my new toy, and I was drilling the Craig jig. I drilled it all the way through. The drill bit is like 1/8 of an inch, which is these two small holes. But the shank is about 3/8 of an inch in diameter, and I was actually drilling those all the way through. And as you're passing this around, you can see the points on there where I had to back it up to this side here. I had to clamp it up here because I needed this much room to get the pocket hole in there. These were the first ones that I did, and they were way too close to the edge, and that wood screw just went all the way through and just popped it, and it was not a very good pocket hole at all. So that's a test piece, and I had to learn how to do it literally. Okay. Actually, there you go. And my wife said to me, "Well, honey, would you do this for me? My birdhouse fell apart." And I said, "Well, my workbench is not yet complete, sweetheart, but yes, I will." So that's the first project that I have done on my new workbench.
That was the correct answer too.
Okay, so, and I used enough glue on it, and the bottom is stuck forever. Okay, next one. Okay, this is a new tool that I bought about 2 years ago. This is the shelving that's going on the inside of my bench, okay? And you can tell that all you do is unscrew the screws and make it come out this way, and make it go down that way, and what have you. And I measured out the 3 sides of the board that I had to, the plywood sheet that I had to use my jigsaw on, and I just marked it. Next one, there it is. I just marked it on the plywood, and then I used my jigsaw. And I got 8 perfect cuts, and I was really, it was the first time I got a chance to use that tool. It was like 10 or 15 bucks, whatever it was, and I sent it off on the internet. And I thought it was, I finally got a chance to use it, so that was really cool. Okay. Next
What's
slide.
the name of the tool?
I don't know. I can bring it in and show it to you. It's on the side of the yellow box. Okay. And the next time you come over, I'll show it to you. Anyway,
Okay.
Here's pretty much the finished product. Okay, with a few tools on it, just to give you a little bit of registration size of what I've got there. There's my shelves. Okay. This is the biggest error on it. When I put the 12 2x4s into the press there and squeezed them down with the clamps, I had one that slipped on me, and we sanded it down on the other side, and I just left it as it is. Okay. Yep.
Terry said that if the bigger Craig jigs, they all have the height adjustments built in, so you don't have to do all the.
Oh, okay.
But test piece.
Thanks, Terry. Who else we got today?
I don't know.
Just a couple? Okay, all right, that's good. We're getting some feedback, all right? But anyway, those are the tools that I was using, okay? All right, next slide. Okay, and there I am. That's the first of, I think, and I lost count, I think it was 6 coats of brush-on polyurethane right off the shelf at Menards. I got one coat of polyurethane on the entire thing, the shelves and the uprights and the laterals and whatever, and then after I got everything coated once, I put multiple coats on the top. And that's the first coat there, okay? Next one. Okay, and that's what it looks like. And then the only other thing, let's see, there's one more set of slides. Bob came over to help me put the vise on. Next one. There, we got the vise on. We didn't stop to think about taking pictures of what we did when we did put the vise on. But what we did do, we set the vise down on my scrap piece, and it's got, 4 little holes for lag bolts. It's a bottom mount, and we drew the circles where the lag bolts were going to go, and then we clamped this underneath the tabletop in the precise location where we wanted to put it. And then he had his 90-degree alteration tool on his drill, and we got 4 holes drilled into the underside of the table, and it didn't take more than 5 minutes to get those 4 lag bolts in there. It took us longer to figure out how we were going to do it and what we were going to do than what it did to actually clamp that guy down there. So I still have to put some MDF on the jaws, and it's just 1/8 of an inch underneath being completely flush with the table. So I'll build that up a little bit. And it's got a little guy that you can raise up there. Let me ask you guys, what size hole should I drill for the bench dogs? Or is that a 3/4 inch hole, or is that a 1 inch hole? Anybody know?
It depends, if you're gonna go metric, you're gonna go Craig or you're gonna go Festool.
Oh, I don't know.
Festool is 20 millimeter, and
Okay,
then Craig is 3/4 inch.
okay,
Yeah.
3/4 inch, all right.
Yeah.
Then I'll use American Imperial then.
And I would only go to a 1 inch hole if you have a really thick top.
Okay.
And because you're gonna have to buy specialty, hold fast specialty equipment, usually to be able to take advantage of a 1 inch hole.
Okay.
So,
Ju-
yeah,
ju-
3/4 or 20 millimeters, depending on, would be
Okay.
the same answer I would give.
But this thing is 2 3/4 inches thick, so I should only drill an inch.
I would only use a 1 inch if I'm like 4.5 inches or deeper for my bench top, so.
Okay. All right, that's cool. All right, thank you. Next slide. That's another shot of the on the undercarriage there, where we put that in. Next slide. I scavenged a hanging system from my garage, and most of my clamps and what have you were upstairs in the garage, and I brought this downstairs. I'm going to be attaching that to the struts in my house, and I've got a whole basket full of these things, so I'm actually gonna have everything, just about everything downstairs in the basement. Okay, next slide. Yep, there it is. That's most of the stuff that I've been using. Okay, there's all my hangers. And it's all the straight edges and glue bottles and drill and sander and everything that I've been using. And so in the next week or so, I'm gonna have all of that put away and organized to really cool. Next slide. Is that the end of it?
Mhm.
Okay, all right. Yes, one question.
One thing you could do too, if you're gonna drill all those holes on your table, if you don't, one risk you run into is you might have some of your small parts and other projects fall in those holes.
Yeah.
And there's a guy named Ron Paulk, P-A-U-L-K, has a really nice setup of a table he makes using MDF, 3/4 inch MDF, and he drills like every 96 millimeters on it, the holes. And you can actually put that, clamp it to the top of your workbench.
Oh, I see what you're
So,
saying, yeah.
so when you need something like that, it's called a multi-function table.
Uh-huh.
It's there and then you take it off. Otherwise, you're gonna have some of your small parts or pieces fall in those holes.
Yeah, and that
When
you don't
you're
want
working
to
on
do
other
much
projects
part
too.
of it. Yeah, no, that's something to consider.
Yeah, and I actually got the jig. I can actually cut the holes for you. It might take an hour. You just.
It's
provide
gonna
the
be
MDF.
your workbench, but you can't take it out of my house because it's too big and too heavy. All right, okay.
So he's just gonna have to end up buying you 2 bandsaws at this point.
I'm liking that. I'm liking that.
Okay, we are almost out of time. Any other questions? Well, thanks for listening to me, guys. Oh, and you know what one other thing that I forgot to do. Every year, in November, with my wife being, part of Festival of Trees, I've been, doing a gingerbread house. And I've always brought something in, whether it was the prototype or the gingerbread house itself or, photos or whatever, to show you guys. And everybody has always been really, really interested in it. I forgot to send you that gingerbread house photo of mine, so maybe we'll catch that next time. But I did do a gingerbread house this year, okay, even though we were in the middle of pandemic. Norm?
Excuse me, but what's the other regular part of all programs?
I don't know, what?
We still have 40
Show
minutes.
and tell.
Yeah, we're getting there, that's why I quit. Okay, next up is show and tell. Okay, show and tell, who's got show and tell? Norm, you got something?
Does anybody need anything?
Augie is between jobs, so he comes over to my place periodically.
You okay?
And he helps me with yard work and gardening and so on, and then I help him with a project. So here's Augie's project.
Hey. Nice, Augie.
So, as you can see, it's a standard coat / hat rack, my assortment of hats and coats. So it's predominantly sycamore, including this long 2x4 that we started out with for putting 45 degree cuts on the edges. And I
You
think
mean the
these
chamfer.
and these are white oak, the rods and the balls at the end. What I thought was particularly interesting is that, well, I guess what I find interesting about woodwork in general is the various, the application of various engineering principles to make something that ultimately looks beautiful. So I thought it was interesting how Norm showed, well, he essentially did the work of hiding the screws that were used to attach these arms to the base here by creating these little knots of white oak that were then slipped into the sycamore. And so after it's been coated, it's essentially not visible. So, and, you know, as I was alluding to before, just I mean, it's something that you guys are all used to, but starting out from something, from the various pieces which look nothing like this and ending up with something like this is
Quite a
it's a really
transformation,
worthwhile
isn't it?
project.
Augie, you said you're moving. Are you leaving town or?
Going to Jacksonville, ultimately going to Jacksonville in order to work in a contract research organization that's there. But I won't be moving until 1st of June or possibly 1st of July. And hopefully I'll still be able to come in for the meetings at the once a month.
Nice project.
Before I moved here, we had a woodworking club that I started in Vandalia. And we had a guest speaker that I helped a little bit every summer. And he was famous throughout the St. Elmo, Effingham area for making quilt racks. And this was his design for the shape of the feet of the quilt racks. It's merely a round over on both ends of a short piece, and around over here, but it has a rather appealing shape for this sort of thing.
It does.
This is, I forgot my hearing aids, but I couldn't hear everything Augie said, but this is mostly sycamore.
Where'd you get the sycamore?
Last month,
Oh, no, where did you get the sycamore?
what,
Where did you get the sycamore?
we're still not hearing you.
Oh, where did you get the pieces of sycamore that were used?
From a tree that we cut down. I gathered logs before I came up here to Springfield, and I had a sycamore log, and that's a leftover piece. A month ago, I brought in this new, relatively new type of cyclone that's now made in China, and it resembles the Dust Deputy made by Oneida. I had already copied a real Dust Deputy that a former president bought for $65 14 years ago. Anyhow, I looked at this on the internet and I thought it was a 3-inch spout. Turns out to be the same as the one that I made by hand out of sheet metal. So I brought it in to sell it last time, and there was no serious bidder. But Augie is trained in science, and we put this little baby to the test, and the efficiency is 98.4%. So you only lose a gram and a half out of about 500 grams of chips from a planer, chips from a jointer, sawdust from a table saw, and sanding dust. A lot of the people that test them on the computer, they just do heavy stock, which is easy to separate, but you start throwing in sanding fines, and you lose a lot. We even weighed the filter in the shop vac before and after, and we lost 0.6 of a gram to the filter.
That's
We're
good.
done.
Very good.
Yeah, I'd mentioned Augie, you had said that it'd be the same dust, but being new to it and seeing something come out of something else. No matter how long you do this, that's the reason a lot of us keep doing it, is seeing something come out of essentially nothing. Because if you lose that part of it, there really is no joy in doing this. So I think we all still see that, and that's a big part of it.
Okay. Items for sale. Anybody got anything for sale?
I'll do a quick show and tell.
Okay, quick.
We still have,
Okay.
we still have 30 minutes.
7:30.
So, one of the things, if any of you guys are metal workers, you already know what I'm about to do. But one of the things that I learned was the things that I can learn from other skills, from other trades, those sorts of things. And one of the things that I didn't have a mastery of until many years into my woodworking was kind of integrating with metal items. So there's a few different names for them. Usually they go by screw punches. Anybody familiar with a screw punch already? If you're shaking your head, that probably means that you've done some metal working in the past. Have you ever come across a situation where, like, you have a cast iron piece of metal that you need to attach something wooden to, or even something metal to, and you need to know, like, the bolt pattern that's already in that particular item? I ran across this as I was adding a dust shroud to my table saw, because the table saw already had a cast iron setup. So let's say that you've got something like this. Although, in my case, I did not have access to the backside because they weren't through holes coming through the cast iron. If they were through holes, you can use something called the center punch, which I actually have those with also. But if you don't have a through hole, they make little tiny, and I know they're kind of hard to see. They make tiny little screws basically that have a point on them, and they're able to be screwed in and out. And I just made up this piece today to be able to do this demonstration with.
Yeah, it's that screw.
Well, they're similar to a set screw. I'll pass this around once I get it secured down so that you can actually see it, but it's similar to a set screw, but then it has a point on the end of it. So what I'm able to do then, most of the time when you buy them, they come with a little handle so that you can actually screw them in. So I've got it screwed in relatively tight, actually maybe a little too tight there. Since the screws are coming through the back, I'm going to put this little piece of wood underneath it. But now, Cameron, would you pass me the hammer?
Yes.
I didn't grab it. So I have a piece of wood now that I want to be able to literally just bolt into this piece of metal. I can take the piece of wood right here, take a hammer, and go one single hit with it. I now have my 2 starter holes already set. There's no measuring. If I have 5 holes that I need to line up, all 5 holes are already lined up. So I don't have to go, okay, that's 33.6 degrees and it's 3.74 inches. This was a heaven send to me as I was making that dust shroud, just because there were 4 bolts and they weren't in any particular pattern. They weren't in metric, they weren't in imperial. They were just random spots on my particular saw. So I'll pass this around so that you can see what they look like. I'll close this guy up. I'll just ask don't open this so that I don't lose one of the screw punches.
I guess I've got some, never used
Just
them.
that tool.
And there's that.
I ended up with some centering, I guess they're for dowel rods.
Yeah,
Centering
and
points.
the
Same
dowel rod,
concept, I guess.
right, yeah, dowel, when you're using dowels, you have the little dowel pin.
Center
Oh, you
failure.
dropped
Yeah, I've never used them, but I do have some.
The similar thing that I was talking about here is for metal. These are, traditionally you'll find these in metalwork. Actually, I'll tell you, just buy them at Harbor Freight because they're not, you're not going to use them that often that it's probably going to be worth it for anything else. Like what I have over there is like a set of 40 of them, or 30 or 40 of them, something like that. It's like $15. But what it has then is that it has a point with a whole bunch of different various diameters, so I can actually get the thing that fits directly down into the middle of it, and then use my hammer, pop it, and leave a little mark on it. So I'll pass that around too. So that's just a little bit of the metalworking being brought into the woodworking side of things for when you're doing that odd type of arrangement that you need to be able to do the thing that you never thought you needed to do. So.
I have a set of these special center punches too, and Augie and I used it to line up the leg brace.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay. I look at my watch, it said at 7 o'clock we gotta quit, but we gotta quit at 7:30, so we got another 25 minutes, guys. That's what I get for being so damn nervous.
Well, one thing is if we're done early, people can hang around and talk.
Yes, okay, so, next month's committee,
Oh, for sale.
I'm sorry?
For stuff for sale.
Yes, stuff for sale, anybody? One. I'm sorry. Okay.
No wonder he brought it up.
I got a 3 horsepower dual bag dust collector, with the plastic bags on the bottom, the filter bags on top. It's a no-name one. It's back when Harbor Freight sold the big 3 horsepower ones, 220 ones. And then I've got a Delta 1.5 horse single stage with a brand new Win Environmental cartridge filter on top. The motor on that one was just rebuilt by a local motor shop. And that one will come with a homemade dust separator, hose, remote, everything to go, ready to go. So if you're interested in either of those two, just let me know.
Okay. Take them both.
If you're interested in a Hall Tree quilt stand, let Augie know.
I hear he's going into business, so.
Okay. Anything else for sale? All right. Next month's committee will consist of Jim Sentko, Dave Dewey, Jeff Hudland, Jerry Marsick, Jerry Rashke, and Linda and John Snodsmith. So we'll be getting in touch with them and see what they want to do. All right. 50-50 drawing.
Alright, so
Oh,
are we good to go?
are we ready to go? Okay.
Let's see, you got the little,
Wanna do a 50-50?
Sure. How many tickets did we sell?
Not enough.
Not enough? Well, so what's the winner's share?
Yeah, I mean, I see the holes in that box.
It'll be $11.
your bench down
Um,
there.
$2.96.
And then Vista was like,
$2.96. You sold it to Mr. President. Hey, I'm glad we did this.
put in like special plans, clam stuff.
All right. $11 to the treasurer.
But I thought there was something that you were saying stuff falls through there.
Okay.
Alright.
On his workbench, if you go,
So we're good to go online?
he's not usually putting bench logs in the end.
And the rest of it don't want to wear that.
You gotta suck 'em out. This, you say this is inside,
Okay.
use it anyway.
Um,
Then you take it off. Set it aside.
By the way, the dust separator is for sale too, if anybody wants to make a serious offer.
Norm, I'm sorry, what was that? The
dust separators.
the dust separator? Norm's dust separator? All right. Okay, what else we got to talk about? That about it? Okay, all right, well, why don't we adjourn the meeting and, we'll just sit around and look at stuff and talk and what have you, and, converse till 8 o'clock. Thanks, guys, good meeting.
7:30.
7:30, see,
I'm not seeing use for it in particular.
that's what I get for being 70 years old.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean,